What made you join the armed forces? How did you feel about the war?
I graduated in high school in 1967, and I was not, my grades weren't quite good enough for be college eligible. It was try to get a job or join the military. At that time, my draft status was 1A, and basically that was like the kiss of death as far as work goes. I had a job lined up as a draftsman at Eastern Greyhound Lines, and the interview went very well. And then they asked me the killer question, what is your draft status? I said 1A, and that was the end of the interview. They wouldn't hire me because they were afraid they'd get me trained and then I would be drafted. So that's how I got in the military. My choice was Army, Navy, Marines, or Air Force. I wasn't really into Air Force, and I saw what some of the Marines do, and I didn't want to be on the ground. And I saw the Army was doing the same thing, and I didn't want to be in the ground. So I joined the Navy because I've always liked ships and boats. So that's how I did that. As far as the Vietnam War, it was a political war. It was a war where we were basically fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. So it wasn't, and then when I got out of the service and I came back to the States, I wasn't exactly a well-liked person because I was in Vietnam and I was in the military.
Okay, did you ever see the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
And, okay, did you think it was an accurate portrayal of the war?
As far as World War II, probably it was. It's hard to say. I wasn't in World War II.
Yeah.
But as far as World War II, it probably was a fairly decent portrayal.
But as far as Vietnam, was it similar at all?
No.
No?
No. Vietnam was a total different war. World War II was fought over in Europe for the most part, except for the Pacific area, which was mostly in jungles. But even then, that was somewhat different.
All right. What was your most vivid memory of the Vietnam War? Like, what do you remember the most?
Well, the country was, if you ever watched the movie with Tom Hanks, I'm trying to think of the name of it offhand. He was Forrest Gump. The movie Forrest Gump, and he was talking about going out into the bush, and it started raining, and it didn't stop raining for 3 months, and that was probably the most vivid thing that I was there with. The other incident was we had the opportunity. We went into Da Nang. Our ship went into Da Nang to offload some Marines, and it was Christmas Day. So we ended up, Christmas Day, we were told that if we got these whole company of Marines off our vessel, then we could, some of us could go see the Bob Hope show. Well, we accomplished in 4 hours what would normally take about a week to do. I mean, we were putting stuff over the side into vessels and getting it off. And the upper echelon saw that we did such a wonderful job. They said, okay, now we got another company of Marines to bring on back on board ship. So we were stuck loading them up. So we never got to see the movie, get to see the program. I ended up 6 months later, after I got back into the world, I got to see it on TV. And one of the times that Bob Hope was standing up on stage, he had the cameras pan through the harbor, and he saw this vessel out there working, loading, taking equipment off and putting equipment on the vessel. And he says, some guys just don't get a break on a holiday, and that was us. So I saw a picture of us, on camera footage of us working. So That was one incident. Another incident, we were sitting in Da Nang Harbor waiting for a cargo ship from the United States to bring us several pallets of rice because we ran out of rice. And I went to the supply officer. I ran into him one day, and I says, "How come we're sitting here?" He said, "Well, we're waiting for rice to come from the United States." I looked at him. I said, "What are you crazy?" I says, "We're in a place that does nothing but rice." The next thing I know is I'm in a boat going to shore, and we're loading pallets of rice into one of our landing craft, and we're taking it over. So we're taking rice, Vietnamese rice, putting it on board ship. I'll tell you, the Vietnamese rice tasted a whole lot better than the American rice. And even to this day, I really don't like American rice. I like the jasmine rice. It's better tasting.
Nice. All right. So what was describe the most difficult mission you had during the war that you went on?
We were the amphibious command vessel for all amphibious operations when Qua Vet got overrun by the North Vietnamese. We put 400 Marines over the side. We were amphibious support, and anything that needed to go to shore came through us. Had to be cleared through our captain and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And we basically worked around the clock. At that particular time, I don't think I saw my rack for about a week. If I wasn't doing some work on board ship, we were at general quarters for pretty much most of the week. I'll tell you, if you needed to get a couple hours of sleep, you couldn't even go down to your rack. You had to stay on station. So I'll tell you, a battle helmet, a coil of rope, and a life jacket, you can get some quality sleep. And there's been times I've actually fallen asleep standing up. Wow. So when the operation was over, we went to bring our Marines back, and we only had 200 of them left. Then what we had to do was go through all the cargo areas, find the sea bags and the personal effects of the Marines that didn't make it. And we had to bring it out to the fantail of our vessel, and they would have a helicopter hover over the fantail, basically a couple feet from the gun tubs. It was the rotor blades, and we're in heavy seas, pitching seas, so the helicopter had to rise and fall with the vessel itself, so it had to be in sync, the rise and fall with the back end of the vessel. So that got to be pretty hairy. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. That was one of the aspects that we had to do.
How do you think the military affected your post-war life, like when you got back home?
In the beginning, it wasn't exactly pleasant because the Vietnam War was not a popular war. Right. People said that we were baby killers and burned villages and killed women and stuff like that. I, being on board ship, didn't have too much personal effect with that. It did give me a sense of discipline and tenacity to work through difficult situations. And sometimes even to this day, I still rely on that training and that ability. It definitely heightens your awareness of what goes on around you. Normal John Q. public nowadays that's never been in the military and never had to see combat or never had to be in a situation where your life was at stake. Right. It really don't understand. And to try to talk to a person who's never been in the military and has never seen combat, to try to explain to them, what your experiences are is like talking to a brick wall. You just might as well go talk to the brick wall. The brick wall will listen to you more than the person. They just don't understand, and there's no way to explain it.
So, well, what was the most graphic combat that you ever witnessed?
I had to kill 2 swimmers that put a mine on our vessel. I was guard duty. We're a World War II vessel, and we had World War II weapons, so I had a choice of an M1 carbine or the M1 Garand, and since I used the M1 Garand as a younger kid in the gun club I belonged to, and I shot with military weapons up at Camp Perry at the national matches, I always had the M1 Garand, so I was most familiar with it. So, plus it also has a little bit of a, it's pretty accurate out to about 600 yards. So I was on guard duty, sentry duty, one night, and I noticed that we had 2 swimmers come up, and I did the appropriate signals to the officer of the deck on the bridge to let them know that we had some unwanted guests coming up alongside of our vessel. And they notified the captain. The captain come out there, and I ended up going up to the open bridge to talk to the captain about it. And they brought a signalman up, and he took a signal lamp and spotted out in the water and spotted the 2 swimmers. Well, we tried to get base security to come out and grab them, and base security, like the normal police department here in the United States, takes forever to show up. Well, they didn't show up. We tried 3-4 times to get them out there, and they just didn't show. So the captain turned around to me and says, "I want them dead." So I had to take my M1 Garand and take aim on them, and I tried to bench it, but the movement of the ship couldn't give me any good steady point, so I had to use what they call a standing position and get in sync with the vessel, and then I had to take my shots. And the first one I missed by about a foot. My second shot hit the first swimmer in the head, and the third shot put the second swimmer in the head and took care of him. When I started shooting, that's when base security decided to show up. So they brought a guy from the underwater demolition team to take a search of our vessel, and they found 2 limpet mines just about one of the hold areas where we had all the ammo for the Marines. So if that thing went off, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Wow. So, you were saying the other day how you didn't want to join the Navy SEALs. Why did you not want to make that decision?
I would have had to go back to Vietnam.
You didn't want to go back?
Hell no. Once was enough.
Yeah. Would you go back to Vietnam today, like just to visit it?
I've thought of it. I've thought about it. Probably I would, but I'm in no hurry.
Yeah.
I got other things that I'd rather do first.
Yeah. What was your happiest memory? Like, we have all this bad stuff behind us. Yeah, your happiest memory of the war, like with your friends and stuff.
The happiest memories I had in the military is when I was on board a troop transport. It was the USS Navarro, APA 215. After we got back to the States in '69, the ship was decommissioned, so we had to take it apart in yards and basically decommission the ship. So, and as people were not needed on board the vessel, they were given orders to go to another duty station. I was one of the last people off that vessel, and I ended up getting transferred down to Coronado Amphib Base to a unit called Assault Craft Unit 1. And that was good duty. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, being down there. By that time, I made radioman 3rd class, and I was a radioman. And also learned how to use the radar, and also learned how to handle the signal lamp by Morse code. So I was radioman, radarman, signalman on a landing craft utility, an LCU. They're about 165 feet long, and the well deck can hold 2 Sherman tanks. And the one thing I always say about them is it's not much living space, but they got one heck of a patio. But they're a good vessel. You can do all kinds of things with them. But I enjoyed the duty with them.
Cool.
It was very relaxed.
Well, oh, I just lost it. Describe a typical day as a Navy SEAL. I mean, on the ship.
On the ship? Reveille would go down, which is waking you up. Reveille would go down at 6 a.m. So you got up and got yourself showered, cleaned up, and what have you. And then by 8 o'clock, about 7:30, I think it was, you would go up to the mess decks and have breakfast. And after that, you would, sometimes before breakfast, what we would do is we go up and swab the deck down, clean it up, and take some Brasso and polish brass and all this, all the bright work, get it all up and going. And then muster, so they would see if everybody was there. And about 8 o'clock, they pipe down turn 2, which means it's time to go to work. Now, a lot of things that working on the vessel during the day meant a lot of maintenance work. Sometimes what we would do is do some maintenance on the running gear, the blocking tackles and stuff like that, and make sure that things were working well. Sometimes we did a lot of painting. What happened was a lot of times what we would do is they'd have these things called a deck crawler. It was like a loud machine. It was like a rotary type thing, and it would just chip paint. So what we would do is we'd take this thing and we'd run it down the deck and take all the paint off right down to the bare metal. Then we would swab the deck down and get all the dust off of it. And then we had a primer called red lead, and we would prime it down and let it set up, mark it off so nobody could walk on it. And then the next morning we'd get up there and we'd wipe it down, swab the deck, clean it up, and do that. Then what we would do is put down a coat of deck gray, which was a dark gray color. If you were using the bulkheads, which is a wall, then that would go with haze gray, but they would still use the red lead. If you were doing railings, which were usually white, they were kind of an aluminum, and you used something that was a yellow primer called zinc oxide.
Yeah.
But you would be doing that all day long, and then around noontime they would pipe down for lunch, and so you go down to the mess decks and have lunch.
What was lunch usually like?
Well, it was pretty good food for the most part. Yeah. Breakfast you had a lot of bacon and eggs and ham and stuff, okra and cream chip beef on toast, and there was a concoction which I'm not going to repeat what we called it, but it was like a ground beef and tomato sauce and what have you. And it was kind of a nasty looking stuff. It took me about a year before I could even look at it, and it took me another year before I could even try it. But after a while, you got used to it. It was pretty good. Lunch, soup, sandwiches sometimes, things of that nature. And then dinner was usually a good meal, Sometimes you'd have steak, sometimes you'd have roast beef, sometimes you had chicken with vegetables, and you had a choice of stuff like that. Mashed potatoes, rice, it was a good hearty meal. And then that would be the end of the day, and after that, time was pretty much your own unless you had to stand watch.
And you did that, like, a lot? Or?
Oh yeah, everybody had to stand watch.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment where you didn't want to be there? Like, you didn't want to stand and watch?
There'd been a lot of times I didn't even want to be on the ship. And every chance I could get when I got back to the States, every chance I could get, I'd come off the ship. Spend weekends on land, off the base. Mm-hmm. But if you stand watch, if you listen to Ocean's radio, and they have the ship's bells, they always ring the ship bell, and 2 bells is like, if you start at midnight, 2 bells would be 1 o'clock, 4 bells would be 2 o'clock, 6 bells would be 3 o'clock, and 8 bells is 4 o'clock. So they usually have 8 bells every 4 hours. So it just keep going around like that's how you do it. And that's how you learn how to tell time. And I understand Wellfleet is the only town in the world that chimes their church bells chime out in ship's bells.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you hear 3 bells, you know it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 3 bells is like 1:30, you know.
Yeah.
And 6 bells, 6 bells would be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 8 bells would be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you just gotta look what time of the day it is, and then you can tell what time it is by the ship's bells.
Cool. What was I gonna say? You asked one, I just lost it. What were the living conditions like on board the ship?
Tight,
Yeah.
very tight. You would have a metal framework that was about the size of a coffin that had canvas in it and, some line in there. And then you'd have a thin mattress, and then you would have a couple sheets and a blanket or two and a pillow. And they usually stacked you about 6 high, from down to the deck all the way up to the overhead.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you were cramped in there pretty tight. So that was your sleeping conditions.
Did it ever get like really hot and stuff?
Yeah, once or twice the air conditioning unit went out. We had air conditioning in there. And once or twice it got hot.
So did you ever did you have like a best friend during the war?
I've had a few. We got to know each other.
Do you still like keep in touch with them? Or?
The only person I've recently kept in touch with was my old division officer. Right now I think he's a retired commander, Steve Biven. He's somewhere down around Oklahoma or someplace like that. I contact him once in a while.
So what was your closest near-death experience? If you had any?
General quarters when a couple of Russian MiGs come flying in our direction. They said that this is general quarters, this is not a drill.
So like, what happened?
Well, they kind of flew by us a couple times. By that time, we had a couple Phantom Interceptors show up and chase them off.
Here you go. What was the attitude of like most of the people on the ship?
In relation to what?
In relation to, I don't know, being there? Were they kind of the same thing, the same feeling as you? Like, I don't want to be here?
A lot of us were like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole thing is as far as a general attitude, everybody considered themselves, pardon my language, a badass. Everybody had this badass attitude.
Yeah.
Everybody was meaner than anybody else. But everybody got along for the most part.
What was your family's reaction to you going to the war?
They realized it was inevitable, so they
supported you?
They really didn't, they were kind of proud, I would say.
Describe your commander. What was his attitude?
My commander? You mean
Chief officer?
Pardon?
Like your chief officer?
On board ship, Captain Whitmer was a pretty even-keeled guy. He was very, very for the enlisted people, and and there was one time that our executive officer, he was a total jerk. Nobody really liked him that much.
Why not?
He was. Let's just leave it as a jerk. This is a public thing. I'd call him other things, but
Yeah.
let's just say that even the Marines hated him. you know. And when I was sentry duty, he kind of got in my face, and I locked and loaded on him. I was about ready to pull the trigger, and the captain stopped me. And the captain told him to go to his quarters and stay there.
Wait, so what happened?
Well, the captain looked at me. That was the time we were working 24/7, and we'd been at it for about 3 weeks. So I hadn't seen. He said, "When was the last time you got any sleep and saw your rack?" I said, "Captain, I don't even remember." So at that point, the captain had 3rd Division stand down and go into holiday routine for about 3-4 days, and then the 1st Division had to pick up the slack in our area because they were able to get some sleep. We were working 24/7. Fortunately, the 3rd Division was his favorite division on board ship.
Were you in that?
I was in 3rd Division.
Yeah.
I was in 3rd Division. But our commanding officer, Captain Whitmore, he was a pretty even guy. I remember just getting on board ship, and they had me go under the hatch combing to chip paint. And I was down there, and I'm chipping the paint, and I'm grumbling about it, and really grousing about it like this. And then I hear somebody crawling. It was a small area. I hear somebody crawling up behind me, and he's talking to me. He says, "You got one of the most important jobs on board this vessel." I says, "Chipping paint? You got to be kidding me." He says, "No, you're taking the rust off here, and if you just let the rust go, it starts eating away at the vessel, and we end up swimming." So he's, kind of gave me some confidence and just kind of let me know that, no matter how menial the job is, it's extremely important to the overall picture of things. So I didn't know who it was because I couldn't turn around and see. So the person backed out of the hatch comb, out from under the hatch comb, and he starts walking in an area. I just kind of stuck my head out a hole and looked up there, and all I saw was all these scrambled eggs across what they call scrambled eggs across the bill of his cap. And I turned around. I says, "Oh my God." I says, "That was the captain." I says, "I'm screwed." But a couple hours later, he saw me on deck, and he came over to me. We were talking a little bit. He started talking to me. He says, "How'd you make out?" He says, "I hope you got all that rust off." And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He says, "Good."
Yes, Captain.
So he was a pretty good guy. And our other captains, we had a couple other captains, and they were ironically, when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, we were in the middle of a change of command ceremonies, and they stopped the change of command ceremonies and put the whole thing on the 1MC, which was the loudspeaker system on board ship, so we were able to hear this.
Wow.
And Admiral Zumwalt was a pretty cool guy too. We got a chance. We had to stand Admiral's inspection a couple times, and it was Admiral Zumwalt, and he was a pretty decent guy, real down to earth guy.
So how was basic training? Like, you had basic training.
Oh yeah.
Describe how that was like.
It was tough. What it was in basic training, what they do is they take your whole attitude. First of all, you get in there, and they take all your clothes away from you. Everything. They issue you everything. You go in there with what's on your back, and you bring some sort of suitcase with you, and then you take your civilian clothes, you pack it in a suitcase, you put it into a cardboard box, you put it in there, and they mail it back to your home. So now you're in your military clothes. They issue you a set of dog tags. The dog tags go on, and they stay on until you're out of the service. You got to wear them 24/7. There's a couple guys that used to hang their dog tags on the side of their rack at night, and one of the officers came through and saw that, and they put him on report, and the guy had to go before the captain's mast and was reprimanded for not wearing his dog tags. So, and I still have them to this day. And at that time, you were issued a service number. Nowadays, it's your Social Security number. So, my service number was B425532, and I still remember it 40 years later,
Wow.
you know.
What about gun training and stuff? Did you have to do that too?
They took us down in boot camp. They took us down to the rifle range, and we shot various types of military weapons, and also the 45, the Model 1911 45. And we shot with that and had to qualify. We learned to use some of the bigger weapons on board ship, and as you kind of like you learned as you went, as on OJT, on job training. So, you know, it comes in handy, you know, just learn as you go. In boot camp, they taught us the use of the sound-powered telephones, which was a unit type of thing that you could use it throughout the ship. And it was no electricity involved. It was just you talk into it, and it would send a signal.
Oh, like echo through the ship?
Well, it's like 2 tin cans in a string type of thing,
Oh,
but a
cool.
little more sophisticated. If your connection got wiped out or something, all you had to do was hook it to the metal part of the ship, and you could still communicate. So it was pretty versatile.
Wow.
The funny thing about that particular training was the guy that was teaching us how to use a sound-powered telephone was kind of like that one section where in Alice's Restaurant, where he was talking about the sergeant comes in and starts explaining that. He starts talking real fast and everything like that. That's about what the guy was like. He didn't understand a word he said. So we did that. We had to go through damage control, where they would put us into a compartment. And first of all, they would go through various methods of what you can use, and you know, an onboard ship, if you have to patch a hole, everything is fair game, and being creative really helps a lot. So everything, buckets, mattresses, pillows, coils of rope, life jackets, anything and everything you can lay your hands on, wood and what have you. Everything was fair game. You just had to patch the holes. So what they would do is they'd put you in these compartments. After you've gone through your classroom training, they would put you in a compartment, and then they would start flooding the compartment with seawater. And you were locked in there, and you had to plug these holes. When you didn't quite get the game program, they would stop the water flowing when there was about an inch of water from the overhead. So you would be up there with your nose trying to get air doing that. A couple times I got close to that. The team that I was on got close to that. After we got our act together, they got mad at us because we were in like the lower compartment, and they would have you like 3 compartments up, and they would flood each compartment over you. And we got this one time, we stopped the water, and we were only about maybe knee deep. And it was like an 8-foot, 10-foot compartment. And so they got kind of upset about that. They thought we were a bunch of wise guys, you know. So what they did was they got the guys from the compartment above us out they had to open up a hatchway from the flooded compartment above. And while water's pouring down through the hatchway, you got to shove this guy. And 2 guys would get there on the ladder, and they would shove this guy up through the hatchway, and then 2 guys above would grab a hold of them, and they would have like somebody over by the bulkhead to catch them, because they'd pick them up and they'd throw you out of there, because you had to get, you know, like 6-7 guys out of this compartment like real fast. And in the meantime, you got seawater pouring down on top of you, and it was ambient temperature seawater, and down in San Diego it was 42 degrees. So you were in clothes and you were wet and cold. Of course, the adrenaline is running through your veins, and so that keeps you kind of warm. But they took the guys from the compartment above and sent them to the next compartment up. And then they flooded that compartment, you know, from the one, the water got flooded from the one above it. And then what they did is they had us go up through that way. So we had two compartments of water coming down on top of us, And we had to go up, and then the guy coming up like this, they'd shove him up to through the next hole, going up. In the meantime, all this water's coming down. And there was like 5 of us, and we had to get out of there before the whole compartment flooded out.
Yeah.
So that was damage control. The other thing was firefighting. When you're on board ship, you can't call the fire department. You are the fire department. And the fires they would do is, here again, it's a compartment, but it was also set up like an engine room. And they would use diesel fuel. Okay? And what you end up doing is they would go in and they'd teach you the methods of fire. And in firefighting, you need 3 components for a fire. You need fuel, you need heat, and you need air, oxygen. You take one of those elements away, and you don't have a fire anymore. All you got to do is remove one, and your fire is done. So what they did was they taught us about using the different fire hoses, and usually they had the solid stream and the spray, which was the a spray unit. So when you're using fuel oil fires, you have to use the spray unit, because if you use solid stream, all you're doing is oxygenating this, and you're just fueling it.
Wait, did you become a firefighter before or after the war? Because you said that you were...
After
After.
I got out of the military.
Oh. Is that when you went to Sandy Hook, or...?
Yeah, that's when I was with Sandy Hook Fire Company. I joined a volunteer fire company. And they sent me to different firefighting schools and what have you, but that was kind of like a refresher course for me on fighting fires, because I'd already fought a few fires. Now, back to boot camp and firefighting school, what they would do is they teach you that if you can get water on the fire within the first 5 minutes, you can knock this thing down quickly. Mm-hmm. If you wait a period of time, then you have your work cut out for you. So what they would do is they would start this fire, and they said, okay, go get it. So we would go in there. Now, when they did this, they had these long rods with something that looked like a hand grenade on the end of it. It was called high velocity fog unit. And that went into the solid stream section like a bayonet. You put it in like this and lock it into place. So what they would do is, if you went into a compartment, they'd have a couple of those there, and a team would be outside with that fog unit, and they would put it in over the top of you and create a fog area. So that when the firefighters actually go in there, you would go in there, you pull up a certain length of hose, and then to gooseneck it, and then you would go like this back and forth with the spray part, And one of the things I learned is the coolest seat in the house is the nozzleman. He's got the coolest seat in the house.
Yeah.
Third man back, he's cooking. And you better pray that guy with the fog has got that fog unit that's about maybe 6 inches above your head. So we'd go in there, and within a few minutes, after they got it going, like say 5 minutes, we'd go in there, we'd fight the fire down, and we would be done in like 10, 15 minutes. We were done with it. It was out. Then what they would do is they would sit there and start the fire again, and they would sit there and talk to you for a half an hour.
Oh.
Now you had to go in and fight this fire. You were in there for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours putting this thing out, trying to put this thing out. And it was not fun. Yeah. But you did learn, and we had to take training for damage control and firefighting every 6 months. You had to requalify. So you really had to know your stuff. And this had to be in a situation where it had to be so second nature that you could do it in your sleep. Because, if you may be woken up out of a sound sleep to go fight a fire or patch a hole in a vessel. So, of course, if you hit that water temperature, you'd be awake in a heartbeat anyway.
Always sleep with one eye open.
Yeah,
All right.
kind of.
Well, we're good.
Yeah.
Time. So,
I think we're all set.
So yeah, thanks for doing the interview, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. No problem.
That was good. I learned a lot of stuff, so it's good.
Okay, great.
I'm sure everybody else.